Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Paul Staton, and the topic tonight is how to overcome shame and guilt to regain control of your life. Now, this is a really important topic, and I'm really excited to talk about because from my experiences as a life coach for over 20 years, shame and guilt is a very big issue for a lot of people, and it really stops them achieving their dreams. And in a lot of cases, it means they get controlled. And this is very relevant in the current environment because a lot of governments are using social shame to try and control the population. Good example of that in Australia at the moment is with the protests, where the government's trying to stop people from protesting, because a lot of people are protesting about that death of that black guy in custody in the United States, right? So shame and guilt is very important because if you've got suppressed shame and guilt, it's going to limit what you do in your life big time. So we're going to talk a lot tonight about what is shame and guilt, what causes it, what impact it has on you. And then we're going to give you a couple of exciting strategies to use to overcome shame and guilt. One of them is called the love sandwich. I'm going to give you an exercise called the love sandwich. It's pretty cool, right? And then I'm going to give you a 3-step process of how you can transmute any emotion. Because I know in Australia that a lot of people don't feel their emotions. I went to South America for quite a while, 4 years, and people in South America are a lot more expressive of their emotions. In Australia, and people don't really feel a lot, right? Especially the men, right? But even a lot of women as well. So that's a bit of the background. So, the first question, just on your play sheet, is what is shame and guilt? We're going to get very clear what this means. And there is a significant difference between guilt and shame, right? So let's start off with guilt. Who'd like to tell us what they think guilt is?
Feeling bad about something.
Thank you, Tonya. Feeling bad about something? Yeah. Alisa,
You've done something wrong or said something about someone and you think it's not right. It kind of makes you feel guilty.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Eliza, what does guilt mean to you?
For me, it's a feeling. It's a feeling which it stops me to be fully me, stay in my truth,
Yeah,
and do what I'm supposed to be doing.
yeah. So it's got a lot about our behaviour. Yeah. So guilt is a lot about we feel we did something wrong, basically, right? Or we feel that we should have done something and we didn't do it. And there's a lot of examples in our society, because in a minute we're going to come and talk about what causes them, but quite often we can feel guilty by things like eating too much. For women, probably eating too much chocolate, you know what I mean? Quite often in our society, there's a lot of guilt around sex, especially by religions, right? You can feel guilty for not exercising. You can feel guilty for making a wrong decision. But we're going to come and talk a lot about the myths about guilt in a minute. And quite often, people, when they're feeling guilt, when they often say, I'm sorry. And quite often when people say that, it's not really true. But if people say they're sorry, they feel they did something wrong. But we're going to come and explain in a minute that with the law of attraction, it doesn't really mean that you did something wrong. We're going to come explain that later. Also, people who feel guilty quite often apologise a lot for their behaviour. They feel they impacted on somebody. Or quite often they say, I should. Now, in life, there's nothing you should do. It's all based on your choice, right? But quite often we think we should do something. That usually comes from guilt, right? Now, how is that different to shame? Julia, how does shame differ to guilt?
Yeah, I've been thinking about the other question as well. What does it mean, guilt, and what does it mean, shame? How can I make difference. I mean, I know these are not the same things, but still, I find pretty hard to phrase them now. Like,
That's okay. Well, that's why you're here. That's why you're in this talk tonight.
yeah, exactly. So I have been thinking, okay,
That's cool. Okay, so we'll go to somebody else. We'll give you a chance to connect. But
Okay.
there is a significant difference. Okay, would anybody else like to share? What's the difference between shame and guilt?
I can. For me, it's all about what I feel, and what's happening in my body rather than in my mind. Shame paralyzes me. It's something which literally paralyzes me, and guilt makes me feel like I have a wound in my body.
Yeah, that's the feelings with them, but there's also a significant difference about them as well, apart from the feelings. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, thanks for sharing that, Eliza. Kasturi?
Shame, I would say,
Tonya?
feel embarrassed.
Yeah, you can also be embarrassed with guilt as well. Okay, so let me share the significant difference. Okay, shame is guilt is about your behavior. You feel you did something wrong, right? Shame is you feel there's something wrong with you as a person. It's a lot deeper. In other words, you think that you're flawed or defective or you're imperfect. So when you got shame, you quite often say, I'm a bad person, or you say things like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not enough. So shame is a lot more about your perspective of who you are, whereas guilt is about your behavior. You did something wrong. So you could have guilt and say, I did something wrong, but not have shame, right? So when people believe they've got shame, they actually believe they're a problem. Now, sometimes guilt can lead to shame as well. I'm going to talk about a story. I watched a video the other day, and this is a video about, you know, I don't know if you guys remember in Sydney, and I don't know if you were here at that time as well, Julie, but there was a terrorist that took over a cafe in Sydney. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And 2 people got shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was in the CBD in daylight, right? Now this video was about one of the police shooters, right?
Mm.
And he felt guilty because at some stage he had a chance to actually shoot this guy, but he didn't shoot him, and he felt very guilty about it because obviously it did. After that, he actually shot 2 other people, the terrorist, right? So he did feel guilty. He thought he did something wrong, right?
Mm.
Now, there's certain reasons why he didn't do that as well at the time, right? But then later, it actually got into shame because what actually did is he left the police force because he felt he couldn't do his job anymore. He felt he wasn't good enough to actually do that job anymore. So he actually turned into shame. When you look at emotions, there's a thing called the emotional tone scale. Has anyone heard of the emotional tone scale? Eliza, you probably would have heard it when we did the course with me, right? But anyway, what the emotional tone scale says is that every emotion has a vibration, right? That's how we feel things, through the different vibrations, right? And guilt and shame at the bottom, they're the heaviest emotions. Shame is actually the closest emotion to death. And that's why quite often people who have shame quite often can lead to suicide, right? And deep depression. Does that make sense? Now, in a lot of our cultures, there's a lot of shame. And I'll give you some examples. Like, if you're living in Dubai, you would be shamed as a woman if you walk down the street in shorts. Culture wouldn't allow that to happen, right? Some people even have shame being a woman because their parents wanted a boy. As an example, you can have shame for that. But shame's got a. I thought shame also affects a lot of people who don't fit into the world, which is a bit like me when I was younger. They're very magical, different people. They can tend to have a lot of shame because they feel there's something wrong with them. For instance, kids who are labelled as ADHD, who to me are just really highly aware kids, but they tend to have a bit of shame because they think there's something wrong with them. But there isn't anything wrong with them. They're just highly, the system just can't deal with them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So shame can cause, we're going to come and talk about in a minute, shame can have major impacts on your life when you've got it. And I can tell you a lot of people are affected by it, even if they're not aware of it. And quite often it can also lead to past lives, right? I'll give an example. I work with a lot of helping empowering women, right? Now, a lot of women don't want to get into their power this life because of what they did in past lives. Because in Atlantis, I don't know if you know a lot about Atlantis, but in Atlantis was actually run by women, and women abused their power in Atlantis. You know, they even had men as sex slaves, right? Now, Atlantis got sunk, right, because of the abuse of power. Now, I know that a lot of women that I'm helping, they're actually used to be in Atlantis, but they've got shame around what they did, so they're scared to get in their power this life. That's an example. I meet other people who, for instance, they could have been a witch, which to me is very powerful. You know, witches are very powerful healers. But because witches were actually shamed by the church, right, thousands of years ago, and you know they were burnt at the stake, right? But I think it was something like 5 million witches were burnt at the stake, right? Is that some people have got shame around being perceived as being a witch, and they won't actually, and they don't want to talk about it. They want to hide it. So shame. So just summarising, shame is a lot about I'm not okay as a person. There's something wrong with me. I'm flawed. I'm imperfect. I'm not good enough. It's really about you as a person. That's what shame is. Whereas guilt is about a particular behaviour. That's a difference. Yeah, does it make sense? Any questions? Any questions on that? Julia, does that make sense to you?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I can see you're deeply thinking about it, and that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep thinking, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Because that's obviously quite often why we come to talks, is to actually help us look at our perspective of things. So that's cool. So the important question is, this is question 2 in your play sheet. What causes people to feel shame and guilt? Anybody would like to answer that one? What do you believe causes shame and guilt?
I think maybe because something what they did, or on purpose, or just for instance with me, I think when I was young, like baby or very young, when I didn't do things on purpose or consciously,
Yeah.
I don't even remember, but then I know that's coming from that time as well.
But
And also before things, what later on when I remember.
I'm going to ask you this question. I want you to go a little bit deeper. But what actually caused you to feel shame and guilt?
Others conditioning.
Yeah, cool. Explain what you mean by that, Elisa.
It's a program within most of us which run. Men can shame women, women can shame each other based on that programming.
Just explain what you mean by programming, just so people know what you mean. I think you're right, but just explain what programming means.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the best words to explain it. I think it's discussed, and what you've just expressed, it's that program or conditioning. It's a collective belief which was formed back in thousands of years ago from church or from people seeking control, and
yeah. So there's so it really comes from, and I think this relates to what Julia said, right? Is that there's certain cultural beliefs. That's what you're saying, right? Cultural beliefs which are programmed into us about how life should be, right? In other words, what sort of behavior is appropriate and not appropriate. And therefore, as kids, quite often when we're kids, we can quite often feel judged by others for not feeling that behavior, right? I'll give an example for me. Like, I used to love eating with my fingers. I never used to like eating knives and forks, right? But that's not really accepted in our society, is it? To eat with your hands, even though it's actually healthier, because actually your body connects to the food, right? And it's this really weird tradition of putting a metal fork or knife into your mouth when you're eating. It's a really weird thing, right? Now, as kids, we tend to do things very intuitively, right? But I was made to be wrong because I wanted to eat with my fingers, right? Because it's not accepted. So really where that comes from is that quite often when you're a child, you get judged for your behavior, then you can feel guilty, or you can get judged for who you are as a person. So what that means is you can quite often get told off. You did something wrong. You can be punished, or you can feel rejected. You know, your parents might reject you, so you feel guilty or you feel bad about who you are. Because you might say, why isn't my mum or dad giving me attention? Is there something wrong with me? Mm-hmm. See, rejection or abandonment can quite often create shame. You feel something's wrong with you. But let's have a look at the other example. Has anyone been to Nepal? There was something really interesting when I went to Nepal, because I love seeing different cultures, right? Now, in Nepal, everybody slags. What they do, they do that all the time. Women and everybody, they do it. They slag all the time, right? Which in most cultures, that would be seen as really ridiculous. But in Nepal, that's totally accepted. When I was in Thailand, this is another example of the opposite. Now, when I was in Thailand, I saw this guy, Australian guy, he dropped a currency, a note bill, right? He dropped it and it was a really windy day, so he put his foot on it, on the currency, right? He got arrested. Because in Thailand, it's treated a lack of respect to put your foot on the currency because the king is on all the notes. So you're putting your foot on the king's head. Now that's considered as totally shameful in Thailand. You're not allowed to actually stand on the currency. So he actually got arrested and put in prison for standing on the currency. See, that's not accepted in Thailand, right? And of course, this is really important when you're traveling, is to be really aware of the customs that people have. And because as Eliza said, there's certain cultural beliefs that people have. So as I said, like in Dubai, as a woman, you cannot walk down the street wearing shorts. You'd be arrested. It's just not accepted there, right? So a lot of this cause, it actually comes from feeling judged as a child, and then sometimes being invalidated for what you're feeling. Does that make sense? You feel invalidated. I'm going to give an example. This is probably one of my favorite clients. This 7-year-old came to me, right? She had all these allergies in her stomach, and I knew it wasn't about food. It was in her power chakra. I knew about her power. Now her mum was controlling her. That's why she had problems with her power chakra, right? Now the problem is that her mum kept invalidating her because she was very magical. And you know what she told her mum? She told her mum that she was talking to her mum's brother who died 25 years ago. And she'd tell her mum that her mum's brother would come into the cat and talk to her. Now, her mum thought she was crazy, but she was telling her mum about her mum's childhood. So she got invalidated. So she felt shame. She felt there was something wrong with her. But when she came to me, I told her, no, I think you're really magical and amazing. So, but the critical point, we still haven't got to the critical reason what causes shame and guilt. Yes, we get judged, right, by cultural beliefs, which can be, you know, can be the religion, can be our parents, can be teachers, politicians, whatever, right? But ultimately, what we feel is our choice. So what the shame and guilt comes from is having false beliefs about yourself. That's where it really comes from. When you form false beliefs that I'm not good enough, I can't do this, there's something wrong with me, you're the one who forms those beliefs. That's where the shame and guilt comes from. It's your interpretation of a particular trauma. Does it make sense? Because people can judge you, but at the end of the day, what you feel depends on you. Does it make sense? So it's really those beliefs about yourself which you form in that trauma, right? And quite often when we're kids, we don't understand the world totally because we're still trying to fit into the world, right? And it can be very difficult to actually understand why our parents tell us off or why our parents tell us we can't do this, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot.
So just share, Julie. What did you connect to when I said that?
For me, yeah, it came to my mind that lately I have this observation of myself that I keep waiting for validation from others for my acts, for my thoughts, for whatever. So I guess this can be related to that guilt and shame. I don't know whichever I have more. I think I have shame as well and guilt as well.
Yeah.
But and lately this was it, you know, that these validations I need to hear from others that this is you know, like a affirmation that okay, this is okay what you did, rather than so I stopped punishing myself.
Yeah. And I think your point you're making is a really, really crucial one. Because see how people underlying this, right, at the fundamental level, is that people are defining themselves by others. Like you said, they're looking for external gratification or acceptance from others. And it's really about going inside and accepting who you are. Yeah. Now, this is really important when you come to the world to change it and you're doing something very evolutionary. Because most people probably aren't going to accept you, right? They probably think you're crazy, right? Especially when you do like energy healing. Most people think you're crazy, right? So it's about knowing, it's about going inside. It's about going inside and knowing who you are and you're okay, irrespective of what other people say about you. So the underlying problem, which I think Julia has indicated, is that people are looking for external validation. That's what causes shame and guilt. Because really what you're doing is you're defining yourself by others, by what others think. See, I love eating with my fingers. And I don't need to explain to anybody else why I should eat with a knife and fork. You know what I mean? But that's what I want to do. So it's really about going inside and really connecting to who you are. That's what's really crucial. But most people in the world, they look for external validation outside of themselves. That's what they do. They define themselves by their job, by their relationship, by how much money they have, how many material things they've got, right? But none of that defines who you are. It doesn't. You've got to define yourself inside. That's what's really important. That's the underlying cause of shame and guilt, is external validation. That's what you've got to change. Because while you keep looking for validation outside of yourself, you're going to listen to other people's judgments about you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A good example was that in healing. You know, when a lot of people do healing, right? And I even had a lady yesterday who joined my course, right? Now, a lot of people look in healing, they look for the qualifications. I've got it Reiki, or I've done Bowen, or I've done kinesiology. But I can tell you, it's not your qualifications that are important as a healer. It's who you are inside and how you can specifically help people. That's what's important. And I know that because I've traveled the world and I've seen a lot of people who've got really good qualifications in healing, but they're still not a healer because they haven't found out how they are a healer. Because they're looking for this external, oh, if I've got a kinesiology degree, or if I've got this award, or if I've got a counselling 3-year degree, I can be a healer. No, not necessarily, if you don't know who you are as a healer. And it's not your external qualification, which is a crucial thing. It's not. It's finding out your own healing abilities as a healer. Isn't that true, Eliza? So Julia, Eliza actually did one of my healing courses a few years ago. So, Eliza, how's your healing going?
My healing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do massage therapy, but I went fully intuitive. So my therapy now, it's fully intuitive and very much transformative.
Yeah.
So I stepped away from what I've learned at school, any techniques, and I just trust what my body wants to do on the other person's body.
Cool. Excellent. Excellent. So that's being a healer, trusting what your body wants to do. Because actually, when you do that, healing is actually a lot easier because you're trusting your own abilities, because your body knows what to do. Yeah. Excellent. So does that make sense? What causes shame and guilt, Eliza? What we just talked about? Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Yeah. Cool. So, what are the impacts on shame and guilt on our life? And you could even relate this to yourself. So how do you think, if you've got guilt and shame, how does that impact on your life? And it has major impacts. So Eliza, do you want to start off with this one? So Eliza, how do you feel it impacts your life if you've got a lot of shame and guilt?
From my own experience and observing others as well, it stops us from living the life we're supposed to be living, our purpose, our mission, live fully and allow ourselves to to be fulfilled and abundant in all areas. It's like a heavy weight keeping us down and stopping us.
Cool, excellent, excellent. I've got to say, it's really interesting, your camera view right now, because you've got a big space above your head to allow your top chakra to bring in a lot of information, a lot of wisdom. So you can really look at yourself. It's really interesting. When you look at it, you can see all this amazing information coming through your top chakra. That was very well expressed, actually, by the way. Wasn't it, Julia? Does that make sense, Julia, what she just said?
Yes, actually, it's very, very well said. And yes, like
So,
I phrase it better. This is all. I mean, like this for me, I recognize this, that this is how I figured that, okay, I have to deal with some guilt and shame, because I keep stopping myself from to that feeling to to feeling a whole person, to feel happy, satisfied, and excited and motivated.
Yeah.
And I always got into myself some impossible situations. So this is how kind of life had a mirror that, okay, something is off, and you have to deal with that. So yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
the thing that Eliza said is that's a big point. It stops you living your dream. Because if you've got shame, you don't really feel good enough that you can actually create it, right?
Exactly.
But
Plus, I don't.
Go
Sorry, so that to allowing ourselves, and if we have guilt or don't allow ourselves to the prosperity or abundance of any kind.
Yeah, totally. So generally people who have got guilt and shame will have issues about creating money, as an example. But there's a lot of other things too that are related to what both of you have said. People tend to become people pleasers. So if you've got guilt and shame, you'll tend to please other people. Now that's an implication of what you both said, right? In other words, you'll sacrifice yourself, which can be in relationships, right? And it can be in what you just do in your life, right? Because you feel guilty. Oh, I can't do that because I've got to do this. Right? It enables you to be controlled. And this is a big thing that's happening in the world right now. If you've got shame and guilt, people can control you. Because a lot of people they manipulate, if you look at narcissists, a big thing that narcissists do is they control people through guilt and shame. They make you feel guilty or shameful, so they can force you to do something so they get what they want. So if you actually do have a lot of guilt and shame, you can be very easily manipulated. Because in a way, that's what a lot of the governments are doing right now. They're trying to force people to wear social masks, force people to social distance, when there's actually no scientific proof that either of those actually work. They're trying to socially shame people to do it. So yeah, it has a major impact on, for instance, expressing yourself. If you've got guilt and shame, you won't tend to express yourself as much. Because you won't feel you're good enough, or you feel you might hurt somebody if you say the truth. Now this is really important as a healer, as an example, because as a healer, sometimes you've got to tell people the truth, even though it might hurt them. But in a way, you're helping them. Sometimes you have to be direct with people to tell them the truth, right? It's not about being a nice person, it's about just being an authentic person. Because really, when you do, as Julia said, when you allow yourself to be who you are, it's about giving yourself permission, that's when you express your truth. So yeah, it does have a lot of major impacts on our life, absolutely. So the only important question is how can we transmute it? That's really important, right? And there's a general point here. This is all about self-acceptance. That's the most crucial thing to overcome guilt and shame, is self-acceptance. And by self-acceptance, relating to a point that Julia said before, it's not about accepting yourself in terms of other people's definition of you. It's self-acceptance about who you are as a soul and your purpose you come to the planet. It's about self-acceptance of your soul essence, going inside. So a really important aspect of overcoming shame and guilt is actually doing some sort of rituals on a regular basis to connect to yourself as a soul. And I've given those some of the previous talks, which I won't do today, but I can refer them to you if you guys want them. It's about, I've done the eagle exercise, being an eagle and flying above the earth. Or you can go down inside and be a whale and go down into the treasure chest on the bottom of the ocean, which is who you are. Or you can do meditation. See, I meditate regularly every day for at least half an hour, where I'm connecting to the deeper I of who I am, not just me as a human being, but me as a multidimensional being. And it's really accepting my life purpose, a bit what Elijah said before. It's really knowing, why am I here? Why am I on the planet? What is my purpose? It's accepting why you've come to the planet. Another important point about transmuting shame and guilt is understanding the law of attraction, which is a lot of people don't understand. And what I mean by that, the law of attraction says that what you put out to the world depends on your inner energy. Now, on our life journey, we always create experiences to learn from. And in that way, we actually don't do anything wrong. So guilt thinks you've done something wrong, but in a way, we just keep creating experiences to learn from. In that way, based on the law of attraction, we don't make mistakes. We just create experiences to learn. If you really understand the law of attraction, you actually will not actually judge yourself for whatever you've done in your life. You'll just say it's a learning experience. And in that way, you forgive yourself. Not forgive yourself in the way that I did something wrong, but just to let go of the belief that you did something wrong. Because remember, ultimately, it's all about having false beliefs about who you are. That's what's causing the shame. That's what's causing the shame and guilt, right? False beliefs of who you are. So anyway, I'm going to give you this exercise. I'm going to give you 2 exercises now to help you overcome guilt and shame. But the ultimate first one is you've got to connect to yourself on a daily basis, your deep essence of who you are. That's really important. Once you do that, you don't have guilt and shame. If you're really strong in who you are. That's number 1, right? Okay, number 2 is quite often our guilt and shame comes from when we're a child, right? Comes from being judged as a child. Trying to fit into this, as Elijah said, trying to fit into these limiting perceptions that our culture might have. Like, for instance, don't cry for a man, right? A lot of men in Australia won't cry because you're told, you're seen as weak, you're perceived as being weak if you cry, right? So a lot of men, when they're growing up, they say, don't cry, and it's a peer group pressure. So ultimately, a lot of these false beliefs about who you are come when you're a child. So one thing you've got to do to overcome shame and guilt is you've got to self-parent. You've got to know how to parent your inner child who's wounded, because it's your wounded child who has these false beliefs. A lot of these heavy emotions around not feeling good enough, feeling they did something wrong. So this is an exercise that I'm going to give you guys now, which I call the love sandwich. This is what I want you to do. I want you to put your right hand out in front of you. Now, just put your right hand out, right? Now, your right hand represents your masculine energy. That's about you protection. It's like a protection energy. This is like the bottom of the sandwich, the bottom bread, right? Now, in this bottom hand, I want you to feel your strength as a power animal. This is one way to connect our strength. Have both of you guys got an animal that you feel is really strong? Eliza, what's an animal that you see as being strong?
Jaguar.
Jaguar, cool, excellent. Julia?
Yeah, that's Black Panther.
The Black Panther, cool.
Fever.
Okay, so I want you to imagine feeling the strength of that jaguar or the Black Panther in your right hand. Feel that power, the strength. It's like the bottom of the sandwich. Now I want you to imagine that your inner child, which is like little Eliza or little Julia, is now on your hand. your right hand. And I want you to feel your inner child being protected by that jaguar or by the Black Panther. Just allow your inner child, your little girl, that wounded part of you who had shame and guilt from being judged when you were younger. I want you now to feel that strength of being protected by that power animal. Just really feel that on your hand. Okay, so now I want you to move your left hand, right? I want you to put your left hand on top of your right hand. This is like the top of the sandwich. And your left hand is your feminine side. This is the love from your heart. So I want you to send love from your heart to your left hand. And this is your feminine side of who you are. This is your mother energy, which is about nurturing. So I want your inner child is now in between your right and your left hands. So I want you to allow your inner child to feel protected by your power animal, the masculine energy, and at the same time to feel the nurturing of the feminine mother energy. I just want you to really feel your inner child in between this perfect mother and father for you, created by your energy. Just allow your inner child, your little girl who felt wounded, felt shame, felt guilt, to be looked after by this powerful power animal, the masculine energy, and to feel nurtured and cared for by the feminine mother energy in your left hand. Really feel it. Focus on allowing yourself to be your inner child and parented by the mother and father energy. Actually, what I want you to do now is I want you to move your hands to your heart. I want you to put your left hand on your heart, your right hand on top of your left hand. And I want you to imagine that your inner child now is inside your heart. And this is where you can be a safe place for your inner child to be. With your left hand on your heart and your right hand on top of your left hand. And now just for a minute or so, just allow yourself to feel your inner child feeling safe and nurtured and protected by the mother and father energy inside your heart. Okay, so now you can open your eyes. So let's just briefly ask you how you went. Eliza, how did that feel?
It was good.
Yeah? Good meaning what? Oh, you're different. You look different.
Feels as a practice which could be very useful to me.
Yeah. Self-parenting is a very, very powerful exercise, because quite often we judge our parents from the way we look after us, but then we actually don't look after our own inner child. We tend to abandon them and reject them and suppress all their feelings, and we don't listen to them. Knowing how to parent your inner child is a really, really powerful thing to do to allow yourself to overcome shame and guilt. Because remember, your inner child went through all that experiences to help you learn so much about who you are today, right? Julia, how did you go?
It was really interesting, and some of my from my childhood, some of the phases or just kept coming up, like some I don't know, when I was like 1 year old, or when I was 7 years old, and I was, like just memories.
Yeah.
Coming up. Yeah. And yeah, some kind of visualization. And
yeah. And that's cool, because in a minute we're going to give you a 3-step process how you can transmute an emotion. But actually, that's actually powerful that actually happened, Julia. Because actually, in a way, we do want our emotions to come up. It's not to suppress them. Because Julia, if those emotions do come up, those experiences surface, but you're in the space of having a protective father and mother energy, you can help that little Julia transmute them, because it's a safe environment. Because see, one thing we do is we tend to suppress this shame and guilt so deep inside because we don't want to feel it. But the more we suppress it, we're actually creating our world from that energy of shame and guilt. And as Eliza said before, that stops us creating our dreams. We've got a lot of shame, suppressed shame and guilt. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get triggered. You've got a lot of shame and guilt and you haven't dealt with it. It's going to be triggered, which could be in a relationship, right? Where you tend to sacrifice yourself in a relationship because you have shame of who you are, right? Or you feel guilty and invalidate your own needs, and therefore you tend to please other people. Just following the point that Eliza said, this can be a powerful exercise that you can do every day to nurture your inner child. And the more you do it, the more your inner child's going to feel safer. This is what the best thing you can do is actually to transmute them, not suppress them. Okay, so I call this exercise emotional mastery. This is how you can master your emotions. This is a 3-step process, right? And again, I'm going to take you through an exercise here. And then afterwards, if you want, I'll re-say the stages. I heard this question from Eliza. She sent me this thought, right? Is that I'll go through the 3 steps again afterwards so you can write them down. Is that cool? So when you go through this exercise, I don't want you to write it. I just will talk you through it. But then afterwards, I'm happy to go through it again for you to write it down. Is that cool? Okay. So I just want you to close your eyes. And I want you to connect to an experience from your childhood, or could be recently, where you felt guilt or shame. It doesn't have to be both, just could be one, or might be both. So some experience where you felt you did something wrong, you felt bad, or an experience where you felt you weren't good enough, or you felt there's something wrong with you. And we really want you to allow yourself to be in that experience, to feel that emotion. This is how we heal. We heal by feeling it. Now, we experience emotions for a reason. So I want you to really connect to the emotion you're feeling right now, the emotion of guilt or shame. And I want you to ask the emotion, why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling you right now? Why are you feeling guilty and shame? why are you holding on to this false belief? Remember, that's what it is. Why are you holding on to this false belief about yourself? What's creating that? Just allow any thoughts come to you. Why are you feeling this emotion right now? So allow yourself to keep connected. And the third step is, I want you to now ask yourself, what's a new perception that you're going to have in this experience, which is more empowering and connecting you to who you are? So what's a new perception that you can have of yourself in this experience, which comes from accepting who you are? Okay, so open up your eyes. So first of all, I'll just go through it with both of you, see what went on, and then I'll get you to I'll enable you to write it down in a minute. So Julia, we'll do you first this time. So would you like to share the experience?
Well, for me, it came up the day when my brother got a heart attack, and I was with him. And for a long time, I felt guilty because I thought it was my responsibility.
Did he die?
Sorry, a stroke, brain stroke he got.
Did he die at that time?
No, well,
Okay.
for some days it looked like, but then, you know, it was a long process. He's fine by now, but it was like years ago.
So
but for a long time, I thought that it was my responsibility, although I knew by mind it wasn't. But I thought I should have taken more care or looked after. And as a sister-brother relation, I thought that, I don't know, it's my responsibility. Because I guess for every older sister or brother, they say, the parents, that you have to look after your, you know, the smaller, the younger brothers and sisters. And I think this is a really bad thing for any family, that when they are more or even just two brothers and sisters, parents are putting this in them, that you have to be responsible for your little ones or the younger ones. But this is not, it's not good. So I think that I felt guilt for a long time, and then I got in trouble because of that.
So when you
came out.
So when you did this exercise, what came up in number 2 then? So when you said, why am I feeling this? What came up for you? What you just said?
That's my this answer came out that I felt guilty because I thought that it was my responsibility.
Cool. So when you asked her, what's a new perception you could take, what did you come up with?
Sorry, come again.
The third point of that process was asking, what is the new perception that you can come up with, coming from your soul essence? Because remember that emotion of guilt and shame, from what we talked about earlier, is a false belief that it was your responsibility, right? So what's a more empowering thought that you could have, a more empowering perception?
Yeah, actually, it was just this, that it wasn't my responsibility, it wasn't my fault, and maybe I should have addressed this to my parents at the time. So the way how I felt, so it would have been released by now or right away. So I didn't. I carried this guilt for so long, and maybe I should have just addressed this.
Okay, so right now, how old were you?
Sorry?
How old were you when this happened?
I was 19.
Okay, so I want you to close your eyes for a minute.
Okay.
We're going to help you release this, right? So I want you to be that in that experience again when you're 18 or 19, feeling that guilt about your brother having the stroke. And now I want you to really imagine now, I want you to put your left hand and right hands together, like we did before. Your left hand on top of your right hand. And I want your Black Panther to be there. And I want you as an 18 or 19-year-old to be inside of your hands. So I want your 18, 19-year-old to be mothered by you and to be fathered by you. So remember, your left hand is your mother, your perfect mother, you. And I want you to allow your 18 and 19-year-old to be nurtured and protected. And now you're feeling that energy. I want you to send the thoughts that you wanted to tell your mum and dad at that time. I want you to give yourself permission to express to them and to validate what you are feeling. That's what you really want to do. You want to validate what you are feeling. Just send those thoughts to your mum and dad as an 18, 19-year-old Julia. How's that feeling? How's that feeling, Julia? Good?
Yeah, it's good. Like relief, maybe.
Relief, yeah. Okay, so open up your eyes. Yeah. So I feel the important answer for you, number 3, was you wanted to validate how you felt. Because once you validate how you feel, there is no shame and guilt. Does it feel good going back to that experience with your hands? Does it feel good to do that?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So practice that. I think that can be powerful for you to help you transmute some shame and guilt. Because if we're holding on to it, it's going to stop you in your life. And that's why, if you do that exercise and emotion comes up, like you said before, when we first did the exercise with the left hand and the right hand, you said emotions came up, experiences came up. Now you can transmute them. You can just allow yourself to feel them, ask you why you're feeling them, and what you need to do to let go of them, which in that particular case was to validate how you felt and send them to your mum and dad. That's what you want to do.
Okay.
Yeah? Cool. So Elijah, how did you go?
Yeah, good. I just used the very recent memory of today when I felt guilt for taking my time to just sit with that feeling, with the guilt itself. It felt like a open wound.
Wow, yeah.
Very raw. And I just brought that memory back. And yeah, I could feel the rawness of it. And it just it was just for preparation for today.
So where did you connect it to it? What did you learn from that, feeling that raw emotion? Because every emotion is there for a reason. It's there to teach you something. What did that teach you?
Yeah, it's just a wound. Just a wound which was created by others and myself doing the same thing to myself, guilt tripping. And
So remember what we talked about before is that guilt and shame are caused by a false belief. So what was the false belief you're holding on to? As an example, if we go back to Julia's example, her false belief was that she couldn't express it to her parents. She couldn't validate what she was feeling.
I get it.
That was her false belief, which caused the shame and guilt, right? So what was your false belief, Eliza?
Yeah, that I have to be productive.
Oh yeah, your body doesn't believe that.
Yeah, I have to be productive. I have to achieve something each day to prove I'm more.
Oh yeah, that's a really false belief in our culture. You actually got to be in action. You got to be in action all the time. That's not true.
And bring the fruits and show the fruits to others that how much I achieved today. This is how much.
Yeah, that's the false belief you've got to let go of. So okay, in step 3, then, what's the new perception you can have? How can you replace that false belief coming from the real Eliza?
Coming from the real Eliza, I think it would be I am.
Cool. I am. So I want you to close your eyes for a minute, and I want you to go back to that experience when you're feeling that emotion. And I want you to now say to yourself, I am. And you say, I don't have to be productive, I just am. Say that. You don't have to say it loud, but just say it to yourself. I don't have to be productive, I just am. Oh my God, just feel the energy just released. Oh my God, that just released it so much. How do you feel now?
Yeah, good. I still feel some tension in my body, but I feel good that I have the courage to talk about it.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so let me down. I just want to now summarize those 3 steps so you can write them down. So the first step is you've got to feel the emotion. You've got to allow yourself to go into that experience and feel it. And when you do it with being in your left and right hands. Does that make sense? So in other words, have your right hand be a power animal, your left hand being the mother, and allow yourself, whatever experience you're in, to be inside your 2 hands, to be parented. Because that's going to make you feel safer to go back to the experience. Yep, is that cool? That's number 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, step 2 is learning from the emotion. Because we feel an emotion for a reason, right? That's why we have emotions, right? So you've got to ask yourself, to learn, you've got to ask yourself, why am I feeling this emotion right now in this experience? Why am I feeling this emotion? And then you say, what false belief am I holding on to about myself? So what false belief am I holding on to about myself? And then obviously the third point then is, what is an empowering belief or thought that I can replace this false belief? Right? So what empowering thought or belief can I replace this false belief coming from my true, authentic essence? So for instance, for you, Elisa, that was you saying, I am. That was your essence. And see, when your essence, that's going to just empower your energy. This is like a form of soul retrieval. And so like for Julia, it was replacing that false belief that oh, I can't validate my feelings and express it to my parents. But her real authentic self said, no, validate what you're feeling and just tell your parents what you're feeling. Because validation is a really important part of letting go of shame, guilt and shame, is to validate what you're feeling. So that little 7-year-old who was talking to that guy died 23 years ago or something, so she was being invalidated for feeling that. But when she came to me, I said, no, keep telling me more. She was telling me all about what he used to tell her. I was validating her, and now I said, no, you've got to validate yourself. And I had to tell her mother to stop invalidating her. That was the whole session. So I told the mother that you're actually having this impact on your daughter because she does not quite sure how to handle it. So validation is a very important point. Now, the exciting news of that 7-year-old is that a few weeks later, she rang me up. She was actually in Perth, right? And she said all her allergies went away. She rang me up and she said, I had an ice cream today. That's the first thing she said. She said, Paul, I had an ice cream today. She hadn't been able to eat an ice cream. It was like, she was so excited. All her allergies went away because she got into her power to validate her own magic. Isn't that amazing? That was what she just wanted to validate her own magic. And I just want to share a little bit more about that session because it was a really amazing session. After I talked to her, I talked to her mother. And when I was talking to her mother, little Jody, the 7-year-old, I said, Jody, go and draw on the whiteboard. And because I had to challenge her mother about the way she's treating her daughter. You know what Jody drew on the whiteboard? She drew these 2 big, beautiful angels. And when her mum turned around to look at them, you know what Jody said to her mum? Jody said, Mum, Paul and I are angels. Isn't that amazing? She was the most amazing kid. Like, she was just so magical. Yeah. So I was just helping her validate her own magic. No, I said, you got to validate your magic. You are magical. Yeah. Because she thought she was crazy. It's an ultimate form of shame, right? She thought she was crazy because mum kept telling her she was crazy. I said, no, you're not crazy. I said, your mum's crazy. I said, you've come to the world to show your mum your magic and your mum's got to open up to it. And it was really cool because your mum did a lot of crying in the session, but that whole session was around to let go of her guilt and shame. And to know that for that 7-year-old has now changed her whole life. That's why I'm doing healing. Okay, so those 3 steps to do in conjunction with the self-parenting exercise can be techniques that you guys can go away with to help you overcome your guilt and shame. Because as we talked about in tonight, and about what Eliza said before, that it has a huge impact on stopping you creating what you want to create. Because if you've got guilt and shame inside of you, they can be triggered. And especially be triggered by narcissists. Yeah? Because narcissists love people who are in guilt and shame. Guilt and shame to a narcissist is a bit like blood to a shark. They smell it because they know they can control the shit out of you. You know what I mean? And get their power and get whatever they want. Because all they do is keep throwing guilt and shame at you. Why didn't you do that? You're a bad person. You shouldn't have done that. You're crazy. So it is a very big manipulative tool used by narcissists to control people. That's why you've got to overcome it. Because if you don't overcome it, as I said, you're like blood to a shark. They will be attracted to you and they will take advantage of you for their own power. And it's not about them, it's about you. It's about getting into your own power. Because if you've got guilt and shame, you're not in your own power. That's why Jody had all these allergies, because it was affecting her power chakra. She wasn't in her power. Because she had shame of her own magical abilities. Does that sound cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's finish off with, so what's the main thing you learnt tonight? And what's the biggest change you're going to make in your life after tonight? So we'll ask you first, Julia. What's the biggest thing you learnt tonight?
This exercise, I think it's gonna be really useful for me.
Cool.
Keep straight
Yeah.
in myself. These
Cool.
empowering feelings, and yes, to stop validating or feeling that I have to validate myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Self-acceptance, I guess that's, yeah.
And I feel the important part of that is to actually connect to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to stop looking for validation from others is to be more in who you are. And that means I feel you've got to do some exercise every day about connecting to yourself. Connecting to the deep Julia. Who's Julia? What does she really want? Right. Sit in your throne of confidence as the queen of your world. And allow yourself to have what you want. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, very deep. Eliza, what's a big thing you learned tonight?
I think it was a confirmation or just another layer of just making sure that I go back to knowing who I am, and trusting that and staying there, no matter what's around me, what judgment is happening. I know who I am.
That's really, really important. Because I got to, when I was doing healing, when I was learning healing, is when Lady Di died, right? And when Lady Di died, we watched, as part of the class, we watched various videos of Lady Di and to see how she was affected by other people. And I think one thing that Lady Di couldn't be, she couldn't hold her energy around what was going on around her, which is a lot of stuff around that royal family, right? But she couldn't hold her energy enough. Yeah, that's what affected her. Even though she was a strong woman, sometimes she was affected by what was going on around her. So you've got to know who you are. Because a lot of people, what a lot of people do is they get busy in life doing all the human things and they forget who they are at a deep level. No, you've got to connect to yourself at a deep level every single day. And then you've got to be able to bring that through in what you create. That's what Eckhart Tolle talks about a lot. He says, no, you've got to create from the deep essence of who you are. That's how you're going to manifest. And the more you do that, then guilt and shame aren't even going to come into the equation because you're coming from your self-acceptance. It's all about self-acceptance. But you've got to know who you are. And now that couple of exercises I gave you tonight are just some ways you can clear some past guilt and shame. Okay, any final comments before we leave? See how it goes with those exercises. I'll be very excited to see how you go and letting go of guilt and shame.
Thank you so much, Paul.
My pleasure. It was great to see you again.